Good morning, Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of GMB as the Broncos prepare for their first preseason game so far set up against the Arizona Cardinals on Friday. That game is going to kick off on NFL Network at 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time, also on 9 News locally for those of you who live here in Denver. I'm Cody Rourke. I cover the Denver Broncos for Mile High Sports in person every single day at every practice, home, and away game. MileHighSports.com is the hub for all your Colorado sports coverage, including the Denver Broncos, the Denver Nuggets by Ryan Blackburn, Drew Kreisman with the Rockies, and Arif Dean with the Colorado Avalanche as we break down everything you need to know about all the major sports here. Do us a favor, though, if you're now just tuning in to this page, this YouTube channel, this is the hub for all your Colorado sports coverage, so make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you never miss out on anything. For the most part, though, we're going to go through on today's installment of Good Morning Broncos. No practice here this morning in Dove Valley as the team is preparing to travel to Arizona for tomorrow's preseason game against the Cardinals. Hopefully by then the Cardinals have a new field in place here. We'll dive a little bit deeper into that as the show goes on. But yesterday, the Broncos held one of their final practices of the week in front of fans. And the emphasis, once again, is the little things in team period, third downs, red zone, move the ball. You continue to see these points of emphasis because these are the ones that are more likely for Sean Payton and his coaching staff he's going to face here in the preseason. And you're going to face it commonly when you get to the regular season. Before we dive into all that, let's take a look at our Day 13 Denver Broncos camp recap put together by yours truly. The Denver Broncos just wrapped up their final practice before they head to Arizona to take on the Cardinals on Friday, and once again, 5 days in a row, Russell Wilson, the Broncos offense, moving the ball effectively well. I'm Cody Rourke, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, and one thing we're noticing with Russell Wilson here in this resurgence that we've seen from the offense in the past 5 days where they've had a lot of success, whether it's the move the ball period, whether it's red zone, whether it's third down, you saw a little bit more of the same here. And for Russ, he's been ultra decisive, getting the football out of his hands quickly, and in their third team period that they had worked on today, specifically emphasizing third down, you saw 3rd and 2, you saw 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11. Well, those plays there were very efficient for the Broncos as Russell Wilson on 3rd and 2, he found Cortland Sutton downfield with tightly contested coverage by Patrick Surtain and PJ Locke for a gain of 30 yards. He would then find Jerry Jeudy for a 20-plus yard reception, and then would come back to Cortland Sutton on 3rd and 11 for an 11-yard completion there. Overall, the decisiveness of Wilson in command of Sean Payton's offense. Mike McGlinchey, obviously not at practice here today for the Broncos, suffered a knee sprain, will be out a couple of weeks. Isaiah Prince stepped in and did a really good job, but for the most part, the Broncos are heading into Friday's game against the Cardinals with the one thing in mind: control the little things, focus on us, let's get in and out of the huddle. Those are things that Sean Payton has echoed that he wants to see, and more importantly, when guys are done playing for the night, when starters are done playing their 15 to 18 snaps, support the young guys, because for a lot of these young guys, it's the biggest game of their lives as they look to fight for an NFL roster spot here. The Broncos will be off on Thursday. They'll travel to Arizona, and then you have preseason action on Friday against the Cardinals. We'll have complete coverage over there. Mile High Sports, I'm Cody Rourke. Another thing that came out over the day yesterday was the first unofficial depth chart here for the Broncos. And look, anytime you see a depth chart released, I think it gets a lot of conversation going. You get a lot of overreaction. You get a lot of excitement and maybe some hype that isn't necessarily where it needs to be just yet, right? Because I always encourage fans, and it's important, the preseason isn't necessarily meant to be this hyper-focused, who's starting, who's not starting, who's with the second team. That stuff doesn't matter in the preseason because realistically, every roster spot outside of your known starters, it's fluid. It can change at any moment. And based on the way that we've seen Sean Payton do things coming in here to the Denver Broncos, I've been impressed by seeing the high volume of reps I think a lot of players have gotten, whether it's at running back, whether it's at tight end, whether it's at wide receiver. You have so many different guys working in with the first, the second, and the third team units. He believes in getting high volume reps. Now, when you put Frank Clark and Randy Gregory against the second team offensive line and second team quarterback, it's a great test because you're getting a pass rush simulation from two starting edge rushers in the National Football League. So a really good method to Sean Payton's madness here. But going back to the point about overreacting
to the depth chart, there's nothing to overreact to. And really, as Sean Payton had said as well, and we'll pull the clip up here in a minute on what he said about the depth chart. Everything can change in a moment. You know, one guy who's maybe listed as a starter or is listed with the first team or is listed as the number 2 guy may not even be the first guy who gets the reps. And what I mean by that is we all know that the injury to Mike McGlinchey a couple of days ago, that impacts the right tackle position. Sean Payton says that he has a knee strain. He's going to miss a couple of weeks. So that means somebody's got to step up. Well, if you look at the Broncos' unofficial depth chart that I'm pulling up on screen right now for you, it shows Cam Fleming behind Garrett Bowles at left tackle, Cam Fleming behind Mike McGlinchey at right tackle. Well, that wasn't the case during Wednesday's practice at the Centura Health Training Center, as Isaiah Prince, who a former starter with the Cincinnati Bengals on their Super Bowl team, he's bounced around between their active roster and their practice squad. He got a majority share of the reps with the Broncos' first-team offense during Wednesday's practice at the Centura Health Training Center, and he got to go against the first starting defense, including Randy Gregory, Frank Clark. And I thought for the most part, he held up really well. Good discipline with his kick step, not getting too far wide, because what happens is when you face some speed rushers, let's give Jonathan Cooper as one of those names, Frank Clark, I think that he's got a combination between speed and power. But when you have a combination of guys who can speed rush and power rush, I think for Isaiah Prince, the key is, okay, when he faces a guy who's speed rush, those guys like to get upfield and they like to bend a little bit. And I thought he did a really good job against Jonathan Cooper, who came upfield, tried to attack that outside shoulder. He did a good job moving laterally without giving up his base and his power, because sometimes when you step wide and they make another move, they try to get under you or they try to upend you. We've seen Von Miller really succeed with that throughout his career in the NFL. And Jonathan Cooper has some power to him as well. So it's not just finesse. He's got some power. And I thought Isaiah Prince did a really good job keeping base there. And Russell Wilson, once again, having a very efficient day overall here. Let's emphasize that third down period. First play, it was 3rd and 2 here. Russell Wilson just 3rd and 2. You know what? Cortland Sutton's down there somewhere. Tosses, when we talk about ball placement, like couldn't have been any better. You want to get it high, you want to get it outside to where even if you have good coverage, they have what they call the red line in the NFL. You saw Cortland Sutton just body it, put it in there, even with great coverage by Patrick Surtain and a safety over the top. Russ put it in the perfect window for him. That moved the chains. That was 30 yards downfield on 3rd and 2. Very promising. 3rd and 6. The next play, Jerry Jeudy. Love how Sean Payton just schemed him wide open. Nobody near him. A catch and run of 20-plus yards on 3rd and 6. 3rd and 8, you saw a play here. This is where Jonathan Cooper came upfield against Isaiah Prince. Prince did a really good job kind of reestablishing himself, but Russ decided to step up, tuck it, and run. Would have gotten tackled maybe 4 or 5 yards by Josie Jewell. So obviously that would not have been a first down conversion in that particular situation there. But then the final one was a 3rd and 11 play. You need 11 yards to pick up the first. Cortland Sutton, once again, continuing to have the best offseason I think we've seen from him so far in terms of training camp, just how he looks physically, how consistent he has been all across the board. I've loved that about what Cortland has done. He also met with the media following Wednesday's practice and said that he was changing up some things in his routine this offseason because he said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And he said, you know, for me, I looked at my process. I looked at what I was doing previously. I wanted to make some changes. And this is a guy who lost 10 pounds but got bigger, right? So we're talking about more muscle mass. He's leaned out overall. He's explosive. And he's just got this power to him that we haven't seen in quite some time in the last couple of years. And I'm very excited about what we're going to see from Cortland Sutton this year. I think that he could be in line in this system in particular with the growth and the changes that he has made to do some really good things. But on that 3rd and 11 play, really just boxing out, using his size. And Damari Mathis, great coverage as well, keeping Cortland Sutton in front of him, getting his hand on the hip, bringing his ball side hand forward, trying to knock the ball out of his hands. Cortland Sutton is just longer and used his body as like, you know, you see in a big power forward in basketball, just boxing him out and picks up a first down there. That is what matters. Those are the things you build off of. But here's what I'm going to tell you about Russell Wilson and the Broncos offense. And this is why I get fired up a little bit about these narratives that, oh, well, you know, Justin Simmons isn't out there. Patrick Surtain's still out there. Damari Mathis is still out there. Russ is making plays. But you know what Russell Wilson is doing so well here that's making the offense thrive? Sean Payton's design is getting guys open, but Russ is quick and he's decisive. He's getting the snap. he's going to a read. If it's there, bang, he's firing it. And he's got some power behind his arm. We're seeing some sidearm lasers from him. He's just got confidence right now. He didn't have a single incompletion. He was on fire during the Broncos practice on Wednesday, and Cortland Sutton, a big benefactor of that, especially coming off the heels of Brandon Johnson's injury. It's going to force some other guys like Marvin Mims, Montreal Washington, Kendall Hinton, Marquez Callaway, Lil Jordan Humphrey. These guys are going to have to step up a little bit with Brandon Johnson set to miss 1 to 2 weeks here. That could, I mean, he might even miss the entire preseason at this point. We don't know how everything's going to formulate here, but these are the things I think Broncos country needs to pay attention to as the regular season approaches. And look, I think it's fair. Yeah, some people are going to say, well, it's just practice. If the offense was struggling still in practice, they'd be getting torn apart. But they're having success 5 days in a row. They're stacking. They're becoming more consistent. They're becoming more efficient. I like that because guess what? I think Broncos fans, I don't think it's an indication that, okay, hey, the offense is now progressing, the defense isn't. The defense is still challenging them at a pretty decent rate here, but the offense is having success. And I think the Bronco fan, that's watching this would live with the fact if there was a score of, let's say 31-28 and Denver wins with 31 points. I think Broncos fans would take that if it meant, hey, it's a win. You're scoring points, even though for me, I'm a defensive guy. If I'm allowing over 28 points in a game, I'm stressed out. So it's the counter opposite of what fans have been accustomed to. But I think the defense is going to be very solid. I also think that the offense will be drastically better this year than it was last year. And that's a common sign that we saw, because I'll tell you this, watching practice last year, we were all worried about the offense going into week one. I mean, us media members were sitting there in the press box like, hey, I have no idea what the offense is going to look like. And sure enough, the offense just didn't have the realm of consistency. They couldn't put a game plan together. They couldn't find continuity last year under Nathaniel Hackett without every other circumstance that had happened. But even with injuries to Tim Patrick, you're seeing other guys step up to the table, and you need that. And I don't think that Denver had too much of that last year overall. But let's talk about what we're looking forward to seeing here for the Broncos as the first preseason game approaches. You'll get that here on this morning's episode of GMB. Good morning, Broncos. But first, let's hear from our friends over there at Superbook.
We're changing the game. Help your bets stay hot this summer at Superbook Sports, the most trusted name in sports gambling with a direct line to Las Vegas. And now, when you use the promo code MILEHIGH, you score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, Superbook will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code MILEHIGH. Download the Superbook Sports app, enter the promo code MILEHIGH, and you'll get $250 courtesy of Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
With millions of page views every year, ColoradoPreps.com is the #1 source for the high school sports community to keep up with the latest news and scores. From football and volleyball to basketball and softball, ColoradoPreps.com provides a year-round hub for coaches, friends, and family to stay connected to their favorite schools and athletes, and keep an eye on their rivals. Covering high school sports from the peaks to the plains, you always get the latest at ColoradoPreps.com.
What are some other camp observations that stood out from Wednesday's practice at the Centura Health Training Center? No practice here today. On Thursdays, the team gets ready to travel to Arizona, and they'll play obviously tomorrow in their first preseason game. I think we're all excited about that, but I think it's important that we highlight some players who have stood out so far throughout training camp, especially Wednesdays. And I think that we got to talk about Ben DiNucci a little bit here. The Broncos' third quarterback on the roster, obviously former Dallas Cowboy last year, was here for joint training camp practices when those two teams faced off against one another, spent time in the XFL there. DiNucci has been very consistent so far throughout practice. I think his ball placement has been good. He takes calculated risks and doesn't take the ones that I think are reckless, but ones that as a coach, you're like, hey, I'm glad that he kind of took that risk there. I want to see if he's got that in him. And he's also getting the ball out of his hands quickly as well. He's been decisive. Doesn't look like he's thinking too much out there, and he's developed chemistry with a wide variety of players, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. He's been working with every single player so far in those positions, which is a good sign for him to be able to do that and to be able to maybe carry that over, because I think he and Jarrett Stidham are going to play quite a bit here during the preseason. But DiNucci just once again understands, I think, this offense to a T. We've seen more confidence from him, his delivery. And I'm very curious to see how that translates into an NFL game tomorrow when they take on the Cardinals. And obviously their second or third team defense is going to be out there. But some other things as well we got to highlight. The special teams has been so bad for the Broncos over the last 5-6 years. I mean, really since they had Kayvon Webster, that was the last time the special team side of the ball was really good for Denver. It was when Kayvon Webster was still a member of the team. That's back, I think, all the way up to 2016, 2017, around that time after they won Super Bowl 50. It's got to be better. And I think you've seen that in the kicking game right now. There's an ongoing competition between Elliott Fry and obviously Brett Maher. Neck and neck these guys are. I think this is something that will be determined a little bit here through the NFL preseason. I don't think it'll be determined here in this first game. I wonder if the rotation is going to be on Friday. One guy's going to get the first field goal attempt. The next one, the other guy's going to get, if the team scores on offense, okay, this guy's going to kick the first extra point, score again. This guy's going to kick the next one. I mean, I don't know what the rotation is going to be, how they plan to do that, but you want to see these guys in a game make it. Here in practice, you do get some looks of a little bit of a simulated rush look, but in the preseason, it does matter because the opposing team's not trying to, they're trying to block the kick. And if they have to get in your way, if they have to bull rush some guys over to do it, they're going to do that. You're not getting that in practice. But I think the main thing you're looking for with these kickers is just consistency across the board. And I think even a little bit of a factor that plays into it is kickoffs. Who's going to do the first kickoff, second kickoff? And is that something that will determine maybe how the competition will go? I think that's a very interesting thing to watch. No competition in terms of the holder. That is Riley Dixon. But can we talk about Riley Dixon right now? Obviously, the Broncos punter. He has a cannon for a leg, and he's been very, very consistent all throughout training camp. Has received a lot of high praise from Sean Payton, special teams coordinator Ben Kotwika. During Wednesday's practice, we're watching him. He booted a 70-yard punt up in the air to the point where it got so high, it's hard as a returner to gauge. Is this going to go high, land short, or is it going to go high and then go further back behind? And he had a punt of 70 yards. He had a punt of 75 yards in Wednesday's practice. You love to see that because how many times have we seen over the years the Broncos, they have an opposing team's kicker or punter come in and just boom it at altitude, yet Denver is inconsistent with their punting game. That, I think, is a big factor. You're going to get really good hang time from Riley Dixon, which allows your cover guys at the gunner spots to get downfield. So I'm also looking forward to seeing Riley Dixon punt a little bit, which the hope is hopefully Denver's not punting too much in the preseason. You want to see one or two at least here in this first game. And could it be another situation maybe where Riley Dixon doesn't punt at all? I mean, the last time that happened, he was a member of the Los Angeles Rams, and they played the Broncos on Christmas, and unfortunately we all know how that went. That's something I think we'd all like to forget, especially all the people who made it out for that game. I'm glad I didn't travel to L.A. for that game because that would have been a miserable existence being stuck there, not being able to come back to Denver due to how bad the airport was there. But Riley Dixon, you want to see a couple of punts from him. You want to see how he does. You want to see how personal protection holds up. You want to see how fast your gunners are. Can they get downfield when they have two jammers that are going to block them? How do they maneuver about that? I mean, these are the little nuances that if you love football as much as me, you pay attention to some of these other things that aren't so obvious or in your face during an actual game. So these are things I'm looking forward to seeing. But Broncos country, I appreciate you rocking with us here this morning on Good Morning Broncos. No practice here this morning as the team is preparing to travel, but we will have you covered on Friday with a little bit of a preview. We're going to talk about players we have our eyes on offense or defense, special teams, keys to victory, that much more. You'll get that on Friday's installment of Good Morning Broncos.